Hello, BLE520 students, and welcome to the Lesson 4 overview. We're in our learning materials section. I'm just going to click into our Lesson 4 materials. So in this lesson, you're going to have kind of two different lenses to further your understanding about supporting English language learners in classrooms. So the first lens that we're going to look through is more of the practical lens. So you'll be reading from the SciUp book chapters 2 and 3 and also perusing some PowerPoint materials on lesson planning. And this is going to offer you kind of like the practical approach. What does it mean to design lessons for language learners? And this is going to be really helpful in both the discussion board assignment this week and also the RSA lesson plan part 1 assignment that you're going to be working on. And then the other kind of lens that we're going to work through or look through this week would be through reading the book The Circuit by Francisco Jimenez. And that text is going to offer us kind of an empathetic view to better understand the cultural, socioeconomic, linguistic struggles that language learners might go through. And so as you're reading both types of information this week, the practical and the more empathetic, I would encourage you to just kind of think about are both necessary for meeting the needs of language learners in a classroom, and what happens if one's missing? That's just kind of some rhetorical questions for you to think about. So I'm going to click through. The second page here, you're going to see, again, the readings that we just talked about. So you're reading 2 chapters from the SciUp book, and these are going to be instrumental to the lesson planning part 1 RSA assignment that you're going to complete with your RSA group this week, and then also the novel The Circuit, which will be useful, actually mandatory for the reading reflection. Okay, and then some materials again about lesson planning. So these materials in the PowerPoint are also really good to review, not just for the discussion board this week, but also for your lesson plan part 1 RSA assignment. All right, so this is your RSA lesson plan part 1. And I want to say up front that a SciUp lesson plan template is pretty lengthy and it includes a lot. And I think the term lesson plan is sometimes a little bit misleading because it makes students or educators think that this is something that I might be able to do in a 55-minute period in middle school, or this plan is going to be perfect for one day of writing in elementary school. And really the SciUp lesson plan template is going to encompass so much more. So you're going to work to design this lesson plan, and in reality, depending on whether or not you're teaching elementary school or middle school, whatever efforts you put into this SciUp lesson plan template might actually take you multiple days, maybe even a whole week to accomplish the goals that you lay out in the plan. And so keep that in mind. It's not something to be done quickly in one, 30, 40, 50-minute setting. It's really something that you build on over the course of a few days. So in order to be successful with this assignment, you're going to want to make sure that you have contact with your teams, and I know you guys do because you've been submitting your first RSA assignment, the standards alignment, just this week. So we know that you're talking with your teams, but if you need to review them, you can click on the link to see where your teams are. You want to make sure that you read through the SciUp chapters 2 and 3, review the PowerPoint materials, right? And then you want to open up and review the lesson plan template first on your own before you meet with your group, right? So you can see what's going to be expected for this first assignment. So once you kind of do that independent work, then get with your team. So step 3 for completing this assignment successfully is, do the background work on your own to review the materials, to read the materials, review the lesson plan template, and then get together with your group, right? And so you all know that from your first standard alignment, I encouraged you guys to pick standards that you may want to include in your lesson plan, but you don't have to. So now's the chance, now's the time to go back and decide of the standards that you used for your standard alignment, which of those do you want to pull into your lesson plan, right? Or do you want to find new standards? That's up to you and your group. And then to start thinking about, topics for your lesson plan, drafting your content and your language objectives, thinking about background knowledge, vocabulary development, and things that you're going to have to include, and deciding as a group, how do you kind of want to divvy up this work, right? So after you complete the work for the week, then remember one student from your team is going to submit. Okay, so that's the RSA assignment this week. You're also going to talk about lesson planning in your discussion board this week. So kind of the 2 prompts here. What's the benefit of incorporating content and language objectives into a lesson? Are there any advantages? What so do you think they are? And then beyond content and language objectives, do you think that cultural and linguistic background should be brought into lessons for ELLs? Why or why not? And so those are kind of be the questions that you're going to talk about in your discussion forum this week. And then the last assessment that you're going to have to submit this week is a reading reflection. And again, remember, you can synthesize the ideas from the reading in any way that's meaningful for you. And your reading reflection this week is going to be based solely on the book, The Circuit. So make sure you take time to read that book and finish it by the time your reading reflection is due on Saturday. And submit a reading reflection in any way you want to that will talk a little bit about what you learned from reading The Circuit and the ideas that you're taking away. All right, so that's kind of an overview of Lesson 4. Now, before I end this video, I want to go back to the major assignments tab for our course to talk about two things. So the first is that some people have been asking if we have examples of what an RSA assignment might look like. And so I've gone in here and I've added in examples, 3 different examples of the overall lesson plans once they're done for the RSA assignment. So each example includes part 1, part 2, part 3. So it shows everything that students in the past have worked on. The other point that I want to bring up here is the final project. Now, we've been reading over and you guys have been revising and resubmitting your plan of action, trying to make sure that your research questions will allow you to speak to both the literature and the data you collect in your interviews, right? Most of you are doing an oral project, an oral history project, option 1. But I cannot encourage you enough to read through these links on what a literature review is, especially this third one here. Literature review is an overview for graduate students. This last link is a about 10-minute video that does an amazing job of explaining to students that a literature review is not just a summary of all the articles you read, right? But it's actually an integration of the articles you've read and studied and a reorganization of the literature into concepts that you're highlighting in your review. They do a nice job of visually representing, how this comes together. And I think that it's important for you guys to preview again, what it means to write a literature review. And then also, many of you have put in the timeline for your literature review to happen at the end of this project. And as an instructional team, we just want to encourage you guys to possibly be reviewing the literature ahead of your interviews or being willing to go back to your interviewee after you've reviewed the literature to maybe ask a few more follow-up questions, because when you get into the literature, you might realize that there were questions that you could have asked that you didn't think of or different areas to explore. And so even though the steps seem very linear in your plan of action for your final project, it's actually somewhat recursive, right? So you might look at the literature, schedule an interview, get your interview data, go back to the literature, and vice versa. So it's kind of a recursive process to work you towards your final paper. So please, please, please review these resources that are here because they will be very helpful in being successful with both the RSA and the final project. I hope that you have an amazing week, and we look forward to supporting your work in the class and looking forward to what your RSA groups do for your part 1 of your lesson plan.